Okay. Hi, guys,
Hello.
everyone. I'm so glad we can get together and do some supervision. I know that for me, this is some of my favorite time of the week, just to be able to sit together and reflect on some of our social work experiences because, I'm sure you all know, like in social work, we run into some situations where we don't know what to do, even though we're practicing. And I know that we all have different experiences, so we can get together and talk about some of those things. I just wanted to start off by doing a check-in, see how everyone's doing today. You can start, Katie. How are you feeling?
I feel pretty good. I think this week, the last couple weeks, has just been feels like, I guess maybe just ready for the break, and maybe everyone feels like that too. Yeah. But it didn't really hit me. I felt like the whole year I was going strong, and then all of a sudden, I'm getting annoyed by high schoolers that didn't used to annoy me. And I am really short with them, or I hide. And I something is not right here. And then it feels like bad timing because I'm at the same time have these other assignments that are due this week, and so I think just getting annoyed.
Yeah, the break is coming at a good time. So.
Where do you hide when you hide from your high schoolers?
I share an office with my supervisor. And she's gone a lot because she had this crazy surgery, and so she's only part-time right now. And we have a do not disturb sign, so sometimes I'm just sitting there doing
Nice.
So, cool. Don't answer the knocks because if no one answers,
no one's there,
or they know we're in a private meeting. So.
Got it. How about you?
I'm feeling about the same. I'm ready for break. I'm feeling a little burnt out with work, high stress situations, and then all the schoolwork we have piling up too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited for the break to have a break from school, but I'll still be working. So it feels a little daunting right now.
Yeah, you don't really get a full-on break.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
How much are you working now?
I'm working 40 hours a week still.
Goodness.
Yes.
And going to class.
And school.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun.
Wow. So I'm really looking forward to graduation and
Yes.
really get to be done with school.
So excited. We're almost there.
50-some or 60-some days, I think they said. Not very long.
Yeah.
How about you, Rose?
I think I'm feeling the same as you all, so I resonated with a lot. Yeah, I'm just ready for spring break and ready to just not go to internship. And at points I call it internship. So I'm done. But
especially yours sounds like internship.
Yeah. So I think I'm just ready to be done. But I'm getting good experience now.
Yeah.
Running some groups, which I really like. Yeah. So yeah, today was just a little hectic, but that's it. Yeah.
All right. Sounds like we're all feeling that way. Me too. Even though I was just kind of on a pre-spring break, this is my first day back. Feels like I need another spring break, so I'm glad it's coming. All right. So I know we used to do this in some of our classes, but I thought it's a good way to kind of get our discussion going. But I'm wondering if there are any big topics, if you guys have anything that's current news or anything that's just kind of stood out to you that has to do, it could be good stuff too, but that maybe we should address, maybe affects our social work practice. I can kind of think of a few big things going on right now, but
yeah.
you guys think of anything?
So one of my second graders talked about the shootings to me, and he's a little guy, he's 8, and he's like, did you hear about the shootings? And I was really surprised because he's so little. And it was hard to address that with him and at an age appropriate level. But we talked about the safeties around his school, and then he's like, oh, what about a bomb though? I'm like, oh, you have I didn't say this, but I'm like, you have a valid point. But I'm see all this risk?
You're right, that was scary.
Yeah. He plays Call of Duty, and he's really integrated into the media. But yeah, we just had to discuss that and process through it. And he was pretty anxious about the shootings. So just addressing the recent events with clients.
Have you ever had to have a conversation like that with someone that young before?
I haven't.
So how did you think to approach that?
I remember like when we all were younger, around that age, 9/11 happened. So that was a good reminder, like that kids are aware, and I was aware of the like 9/11 when I was in first grade. So I probably asked similar questions. So that's a little comforting, like, oh, this has been happening for a while. Like I was scared, but kids are resilient. So
Right.
yeah.
Go on that experience.
Yeah, that was a good reference too, for sure, to think back to that. I think that often we think that kids are really not just as aware or like have any idea how to handle stuff, but then think of us, the things that we've seen and processed at that age.
And if it's something that really concerns him, I'm glad that he brought it up, because as like a mentor, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Bringing up those like tough topics. So I think if we like hide everything under the rug, it just gets worse and more scary for like those kids. So.
Yeah, and you definitely got to use some of your social worky skills in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, how to navigate conversation with someone that young. I didn't even realize you had students that young.
Yeah, he's my youngest.
Okay.
I have students 2nd grade through 9th grade, so good range.
Cool. I know that's what I was thinking of too. You know, the topic of the shootings and stuff. There was an article today, front page of the Collegian, the CSU one, that was people who were in the Arapahoe shooting. So some of us might remember that. That was 2013, Arapahoe High School in Denver. And there was one person who died in that. But it was survivors of that, and they're talking about like their perspective on all this stuff that's going on because they're, survivors. And yeah, so it was interesting to read. It's obviously a really big topic and it affects social workers. And I think like if you think of the social work code of ethics, how that relates, like have you all thought about how to navigate this code of ethics, maybe with your personal values and this whole big gun discussion?
That's hard because self-determination stands out to me. So you could use that either way, though. You can say like, oh, self-determination, I can own a gun and like whatever. But then you can also think like these shootings are taking away other people's rights to like live their lives. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think you can look at it from either side with the code of ethics, so that's kind of gets hard, but really the code of ethics calls us to like meet our clients where they're at. So like where they're at on that topic, maybe that's where we start,
Yeah, that's a good point. I think on topics like this that are could be very, very polarizing, as practitioners, it might be hard to go into it with like a blank. Just try to be very neutral. Yes. Yeah.
Because these high schoolers, like, exactly what they're gonna say. Some of them, like, you just know, like, their personalities and like just in my relationship with them, I know what's gonna come up. And the few that I know the topic is coming up. I'm like, I gotta stay far away from this because this kid Jed will provoke me. That's not his name. But yeah, it's come up a lot.
But then you know your boundaries too. So like I think that's a really important part of our supervision is talking about our boundaries. And if it's something that's triggering or it's gonna cause you to maybe act in an unethical way, avoiding those conversations and like having good boundaries is a good thing, in my opinion.
That's true.
No, I agree. That's a strength in knowing what our limits are. And I think something that I have learned is I think we probably all have had a similar feeling before where you think that you should be able to do everything and work with every type of person. And if you can't, then you're weak or you're not a good social worker. And in the hospital, there are a lot of different types of people and you see a lot of different situations. And for example, once there was this patient who I hadn't met him yet, but I was going through his chart, because we always do before we go in and do an assessment, and I learned that he sexually abused his children, like, while they were growing up, and there were adults now, but they, had a lot of information in there about that, and a quote of him saying, well, there was one daughter that he didn't for whatever reason, and there's a quote of him saying that his only regret was that he didn't abuse her as well.
No way.
So me reading that, I knew right away. I was like,
Right.
I can't work with this person because I would go in there and just like death glares at them, and I had to tell my supervisor that in that moment, like I just don't think I can do this, and I felt ashamed going to her like that in that moment, but she said, no, okay, that's okay, like it's good to know your boundaries because it doesn't help the other person. It wouldn't have helped me. It would have just made me pissed off or just maybe traumatized talking to someone that I can consider like evil. So yeah, I think that's been something that's a good learning curve, that having boundaries is important. No one can work with everyone. In some discussions, even if they're not tough, like they might just lead to places that we don't want to go with our clients. So we have to like draw those boundaries. Well, on that topic, have you guys had instances or clients where it's been very difficult to maintain boundaries, or maybe where they just really try to push past those boundaries? Can you think of any situations where that's happened, or has it been pretty black and white so far?
I think mine gets really complicated because I have boundaries with my clients, but I also have boundaries with the IBT team. And so I feel like this week, boundaries with both have been pushed a little bit. We have a client, and she has a developmental disability, and she's living in filth. She has urine-saturated carpets. It's very, very unhealthy, and we kind of just let it go by. The team is like, this is how it's been, this is how she lives. It's really unsafe and really unhealthy. And so as we're moving through this, trying to get her to a safer place and a healthier place, our management is really pushing to kind of push our boundaries and push our limits to help her. So they want us to go in and help clean up the apartment to get it all moved out.
Like you physically
all of us physically going in and helping to move her out, and then getting the carpets replaced. But in the moving out process, we're going to be exposed to urine, ammonia, all sorts of really awful things. But this is what our management is telling us we have to do. So I'm kind of in this conflict, and I want to call Adult Protective Services because this is like a very unsafe situation, and my management is telling me not to. I'm kind of stuck in this. I want to hold up my social work boundaries. I want to hold up my personal boundaries. I want to hold up boundaries with this client because I feel like by doing this, we're enabling her. And she stated before, oh, well, Pace will just come in and clean it all up. Oh, Pace will just put me in a hotel. It's so nice going to the hotel, and then I get to come back to my apartment. So there's just it's the blurriest boundaries right now, and I'm trying to stand my grounds, but it's really hard, especially when you have the director of the whole program telling you this is how it's going to be.
And is there, okay, so the director is saying that, does that person have any oversight, or is it basically they're the final word?
She has oversight, and I really want to call our infectious control at the hospital and see if this is even an okay thing for us to go into, because it's we could be compromising our health for years down the road by going into this situation and spending 6 hours moving stuff in this environment, and everything kind of gets moved around when you do that. So
what do you all think about Katie's role as a social worker in that situation? Just explicitly as her role, do you think that's within, without? Sounds really blurry. What do you guys think?
It's blurry. I would say, when I interned at Red Tail Ponds, which is kind of like an apartment complex, I'd organize things and help decorate their apartments, but that's not dangerous to me, and that's not hazardous to me. So some of that is in our role, to help organize and do kind of the dirty work, but I feel that's 5 steps beyond that helpful role. You almost need people with suits on to clean and move.
Right. And I brought that up. I was so can we get masks so we're not breathing this in? And my manager was oh, those masks are too expensive.
What?
And I was like, you know what's expensive is years of health bills
Right.
from putting your staff in this situation.
Did you say that?
Yeah, but
Good for
I
you.
need to talk to the director more about that one, because that was the manager who said that. I don't think the director would agree with that. But it's just hard because I don't want to go, you know, there's obviously like the ladder within the organization.
Right.
You don't want to jump ahead and you don't want to like disregard your authority, but at the same time, I feel like an ethical dilemma here to do something differently. And not only for me, not only for my client, but for my team. Like, it's not only me going into the situation, you know?
Right. Would your manager and director go in to help?
Yeah, they said they'd go help.
Seriously, you think, like, knowing them, you think they would?
Yeah, they're signed up, they're ready, they have their trucks ready, and I'm just like floored. It's like,
Is money an issue? Like, do they just not want to pay some other or outside party to come in?
money's an issue because this client doesn't have any money to pay for this. So she's going to be on a payment plan to pay back all the expenses from her behaviors that have caused this. And so, and then it's not only money. With our organization, you have to have contracts for everything. So it takes time to get contracts in place, to hire outside people, to do all this stuff. And frankly, we don't have the time. This has been going on for months now, and it's very hazardous to her health.
I'm just curious, just to like go back, has an APS report ever been made with this person?
Yeah,
Okay.
before, but not for this situation.
Okay.
And that's when my director was like, I want to, like, you don't do that because this is how she lives. But it's not good.
So
And
you're-
she's a nurse, so she doesn't really understand
the
kind of
social
our
work side of it.
ethical
Mhm.
code of ethics and, like, where we're coming from and advocacy. And she's very medically minded, which is good,
Yeah.
but it's conflict.
I would almost think that she would more so want, like, coming from a medical, knowing that this person's living in filth, because I was thinking, well, maybe, you know, this is something that we can always have a debate over self-determination. Like, maybe she's arguing, well, that's just like this patient's choice to live this way. You know, but it sounds like that's not even really where she's coming from. It's just.
She has some biases, and I kind of know her history. She's had like a really, really bad run-in with group homes in our city. And so social work's kind of pushing for more of the group home environment because we think she'd be more successful there. And like, she is just like shut off. And she doesn't have that code of ethics and like the professional like supervision like we have to like check your biases. Like, why are you feeling this way? Is this because you had an experience? So that's hard too. And like, again, that's my role as a intern there.
So hard, yeah.
And this is a place that you want to continue working, right?
Yeah.
That's another element
So
too.
that really makes it more difficult.
Right.
Like, this is a real situation that you need actual assistance on, and I'm thinking, for us, like, our input could be helpful, but at the same time, it's very much so black and white. Personally, I think that that's like, it's a safety thing, and it's like your choice to put yourself at that risk or not.
Yeah.
But obviously, at the same time, you're not being supported by your management, and you want this job. So where, kind of like you have to advocate for yourself, but where does that line?
Right. And like, one of the major things I tried to do was like get protective masks, so we're not in that situation. And my manager basically was like, well, you can get her myself. And it's like, I'm not like gonna go work overtime on the weekend to move this woman out. And like,
you shouldn't have to ask for a friggin' mask, especially if you
protect
work
your health,
at a,
right? We work in a
medical
hospital.
facility, right?
What type of mask? It's not like the.
They have like ventilator masks. They also have those paint masks that would be pretty substantial. I guess like, I mean, the masks that we have are just like, you know, those cold and flu masks. And it's like, that doesn't protect from things coming in. I like literally when I go to this woman's house, I have to, and I've only been over like twice, but I have to line it with like Vicks and put it on my face because it's so potent. I will vomit. It's bad. It's a really bad situation.
Like, in my mind, that's like 100% not your job to do that. Like, I feel so bad for you. Is there like someone you have like an ally on your like social work world, or like a super, like, I don't know what your supervision is like.
Yeah, we have other social workers, and they're all advocating for the same things I am, but it's like the hierarchy and the politicalness of the environment, you know?
Oh my gosh.
It's so tough. And definitely a lot of ethical things in there too. Like if you take even you out of it, considering what's best for the client.
Right.
Sounds like she can't really take care of herself.
I don't feel like she can.
Yeah,
And
yet your manager's
to be
not
quite honest,
advocating.
she's been in this situation before. She's been
It's a
evicted for
cycle.
similar things and case rushed in 3 years ago and cleaned it up, and we're here again. So it's like, I'm not trying to be judgmental or like predict the future, but there is a pattern, and I think that's worth acknowledging, you know.
Yeah, being realistic about it. So that makes me wonder, do you guys have any thoughts on maybe this idea of like social workers as like superheroes, you know, as far as when are we enabling our clients and more than just helping them?
Or empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like a really messy line that we probably all find ourselves in every day, is the enabling versus empowering, and that like fine line in the middle. I think sometimes we'll swing from side to side, and it might be a little more one or the other, but like the goal would be to be in the middle.
We see that come up a lot at the schools where like these students that I work with and their case managers, they like they're on IEPs or individualized education plans, and they get like special accommodations for their classes. They get to take breaks, get all this support, and it's awesome. So because the goal is to get them graduated, get them life skills so that they can succeed and find jobs or whatever. But sometimes I think, at least in my experience, and I think a couple other teachers and a few like psychologists there, you kind of see that they're running the risk of, it's like some of these kids get coddled, and then they don't like have any resiliency to move on and push through something hard. And then like once they either graduate or turn 21, they lose this like IEP, and then they're kind of on their own. And so a lot of the stuff that they let fly at the school, like immediately they get fired from the job.
Right.
So you know, like on one hand you see these like kids with these like really hard situations, and you want to help them, and you like everything in me when I see these kids like borderline FD at the end of the quarter, I'm like, seriously, give me your homework and I'll sit down with you. Like today, I like sometimes I'm like I push it a little too much, but I'm like I will pass the class where if you sit down with me, but they just like won't even show up. So, but I don't know, it's so hard.
I've seen that before too. So like there's this kid who was diagnosed with autism, and he was within my agency at like a different job, and he's like, I don't want to be here, I want to go home. And it seems like every other situation, like people are like, okay, fine, like let's just call your guardian, like you get to go home. But with me, I like sat there for like 2 hours with him, and then we slowly integrated work into it. Like he was laying on the couch, I'm like, okay, you can take a break, but he thought I was gonna just like call his guardian and have him go home, and I like stuck it out, and he stayed the whole day, and he just came back, and he was better the next time. So I think some people like should learn that they don't get the easy way out.
Yeah.
Like when it is easy just to give like our clients a free pass sometimes, which I've done before too. So yeah.
Behaviorally too, we see those like big explosions and these kids like doing these crazy things and like, or like just not showing up. And then I think too the administration at our school too is kind of lenient, so then it's like promotes this culture within the whole school where then like teachers like get stuck in between like.
Yeah, that's tough. I was just saying that I think that that type of client that you're talking about, that all of us are talking about, that it, you know, maybe relies too much on the services, takes advantage of it, really can be the type of clients and patients that maybe exacerbate burnout. I feel like we see a lot of clients like that in the hospital who we call them frequent flyers, and I know that's not very sensitive, but it's often folks who are homeless or who just, you know, they just want to like come into the hospital and get a free meal and just really take advantage of the system. And I sometimes, and I'm a new social worker, but I sometimes find a hard time like producing empathy for them or just like wanting to help them. And I've had those thoughts like, wait, am I not a good social worker if I just like don't care about this person very much right now? But I think that we have clients like that in all areas and like trying to still do our part, not let them burn us out. But I think it's challenging.
Yeah.
And I don't like feeling like I'm enabling people. But I then try to think of like our code of ethics and just like what is my role, try to stay within that. Kind of what I've learned, as long as you really try to stay within your code of ethics as social workers, that helps in a lot of those decisions and situations. But like this one, there's a lot going on there that I don't know. I hope that it helps for you to talk about it and process it, but it sounds like you know how you feel about it, and it sounds like you have a group of people who feel the same, but still, what can you do when your management isn't supportive of that?
It's nice to process it with a group of people who's that outside lens, you know, because you can process it with the social workers at work and they have the same feelings, but it's nice to like get another perspective.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what your next step will be in that? When's
No.
the cleanup day supposed to be?
Oh,
Oh, so you have to go
it's
on your
Yeah.
weekend? Okay.
Oh, that's another problem I have with this
Do
situation.
you get paid for it, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You do.
I mean,
Okay.
it's on the clock, but still, I have to go up to Cheyenne for
Yeah.
Sunday cleanup.
Yeah.
I feel like if I don't want to like tell you what to do, but if I were you, I'd somehow get a mask.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna get a mask, and I like really think that my role in this is to support my client and like really help her process this process of moving all her stuff out and like really kind of help her weigh what this means. And she has to go stay at a nursing home for a few days so they can redo the carpet, and that's really hard for her. So I think like my role here is really just to like more be with my participant and help her process instead of doing like the heavy lifting and the scrubbing, you know.
I like that.
Yeah, that's kind of a good middle ground, I think, at least, you know, to balance it, the advocating for your client, not really putting yourself in as much harm, and maybe that will help you to feel better just about being there in general. Like I personally maybe would feel a little bit bitter that I'm doing this, but if you think of it like, oh, I'm helping my client, I maybe would not feel so like sour about it.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes me think of another. It's like in some ways now, like it's like if you see, you know so clearly, like I don't want to do this thing, I shouldn't do this thing. But then if your like management team is like, okay, we're gonna do it either way, whether or not you're here. But then I would feel like, okay, I gotta be there for my client. So then in some ways it might feel like I'm enabling my management to act this way and do these things too. So you're
That's
stuck, like
a
you
good
lose.
Yeah. Well, and I'm afraid I'm gonna get a lot of pressure while I'm there if I'm just like really helping her and like helping her pack some things and like getting her involved. Like that people are gonna want me to be more involved in like heavy lifting and those kind of things. So it's gonna be hard to like stand boundaries in the situation when it's happening.
I'm not saying that you are enabling. I'm just saying it's like you're stuck. Like either way, it kind of feels.
Well, I think after this situation, this is going to be a great practice for you in the boundaries and seeing how you can navigate those and like put them in solidly, but also being, I don't know, flexible with your client. And I'm looking forward to doing another supervision and hearing how it really how it went, because I think we'll probably all be in tough situations like that as social workers, and the thought of, you know, because you have that added, it's not just your internship, you want to work there, so it's like a real challenging thing, and I think you're going to develop some skills on how to deal with boundaries that maybe some of us haven't had the experience dealing with yet, so good luck.
And you can't just be like, nope, we'll never see you guys again.
Right.
I know. I feel like I'm bolder in those situations.
Yeah.
Like when you're an intern in a situation, you can take more risks.
Yeah,
because
that's
there's nothing to
That's
lose.
true. Yeah.
So it is kind of hard being
That's
in between
so
situation
hard.
where I'm still an intern, but I'm also working there.
And I always think of client boundaries, because I've had clients kind of nudge my boundaries, but I've not really thought of management boundaries as much. So that's a really good
I
case.
find them way harder than client boundaries. I'm pretty good at sticking with my clients' boundaries and promoting independence and helping, but when management's coming down on you, it's a whole nother level.
They have that power over you, so it adds a different dynamic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, really, that was a great case study for us. Just really went into a lot of ethical stuff and our role as social workers, and I think that we could all reflect on some of those things. And acknowledge that we don't know what the right answer is. But I'm glad that you have social workers up there who you can like support you in that. Yeah. So I think we're almost out of time. Hopefully you all were able to get some discussion about different ethical things and our roles out of this. And next time we'll do kind of a similar thing and just have a case study. I think those are real world applications are our best learning tools. So we will start with that next time.
Sounds great.
Cool.
Yeah, it's very
All
helpful.
right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Supervisor.
Ah,
Yay!
oh my gosh, yeah, 3:30.